Now we're going to hear from Sarah Jane Payne, who is an Associate Professor in Medical and Health Sciences at the Auckland University.
Kia ora, Belinda. Tēnā tātou katoa, tuatahi, ka rere aku mihi ki ngā whānau whānui o te tai tokerau, te tai rāwhiti, te ranganui a Kiwa, te matau a Maui, rātou ko Tāmaki Makaurau, tēnā tātou katoa. So just wanted to thank everyone for your time today and to recognise the communities that have been impacted by these extreme weather events and for whom all of the studies you're hearing about today are really looking to support and uplift through our different projects. So I'm here on behalf of Growing Up in New Zealand, which is a longitudinal study of child and youth development, and we've been following the lives of more than 6,000 rangatahi, young people and their families since before they were born. So our cohort are currently aged between 13 and 14 years old, and so we're really proud to be providing a rangatahi, a youth and whānau perspective to this platform. So what we thought we'd be able to offer through the funding that's been made available is a sense of some of the human impacts, the real life impacts of these extreme weather events. We have committed to completing survey questionnaires with 1,400 young people and their mothers who are living in the areas that have been most impacted. So we have small but important groups living in Te Tai Tokerau, Te Tai Rāwhiti and Gisborne, and Te Mataua Maui in Hawke's Bay, but a much larger cohort size here in Tāmaki Makaurau. We're also fortunate that our cohort was designed to enhance the voices of communities that are often experiencing the worst wellbeing outcomes across society, and we have large numbers of Māori and Pacific peoples in our study, so we're really hoping that our data can support an understanding of how the weather has impacted them in terms of the level of damage, disruption and displacement that they experienced, both in the period of time immediately after the extreme weather events, but also in the weeks and months following. And that includes both access to healthcare services, their access to education and learning, but also some of the important social connections that we know are important for youth wellbeing. We understand that mental and emotional wellbeing is of particular concern following disasters and extreme weather events, and mental wellbeing is something that we have tracked since the beginning of the cohort. So we've worked closely, including with colleagues who are from the Christchurch longitudinal study, to think about measures that will help us understand both how mental wellbeing has changed potentially in a negative sense, but also hopefully to understand what supports resilience following extreme weather events. And then finally, we thought we would also look to support our broader understanding as researchers and policymakers about the response packages and supports that were made available to communities and families following these events. So here we've been thinking about response packages that might have included access to different types of benefits, changes to the cost of public transport, and other things that young people thought were important for them. So we're trying to understand what was available, what they knew about and what they engaged with and thought was useful. So in terms of outcomes, I think for us what's really key and at the front of our minds is that from our understanding of the literature, actually young people's voices and experiences are not often heard in the scientific and the medical literature. So we really want to raise all of our understanding about how extreme weather events impact young people, both in the short term, but throughout their adolescent period. And that's one of the benefits that we provide to this platform, is that the Growing Up in New Zealand study has existed for a very long time, and so this particular survey that we're undertaking can be considered within the longitudinal data sets. So we'll be able to look at how mental wellbeing, for example, might have changed in comparison to when we surveyed them at 12 years of age in 2021, 2022. And then with our ongoing data collection waves, we'll be able to look at trajectories of improvement, hopefully, in resilience, as well as follow some of those negative impacts. And with that in mind, we're really hoping that our data set will be used to support our future response planning, so that the different packages and supports that are put in place reflect what's most important for young people and their whānau. So we, as a study, we understand that young people exist within families and they exist within communities. So, for example, any important insights we can provide in relation to their educational experience, we hope will be useful for schools, as well as our partners in the Ministry of Health, Education, for example. And in terms of stakeholders, we're fortunate at Growing Up in New Zealand that we've been supported by a range of different government ministries and departments for many years, including social development, who's our key partner, health, education. But with this particular funding opportunity, we've been able to broaden our stakeholder group within central government to include transport and justice as well. So we're actively seeking out other government departments and agencies who might be interested in using this data set and supporting us with our reporting process. But we're also very mindful that this information is about young people in their communities. So we're starting to connect in with different community organisations to understand how our data set might be useful for their ongoing recovery work within the different areas where the cohort whānau are living. Next slide, please. And so then just in terms of outputs and timelines, again, because we're very keen for this to be considered as part of ongoing recovery and response planning, we'll be presenting all of our descriptive findings from these questionnaires before the end of this year, 2023. So we have processes in place where we can release information online, and we hope that enables some level of engagement with different communities and end users. But there's also opportunity to work closely with a government department or ministry or an NGO to develop up some policy reports or briefs with their support. Again, we really value the support and collaboration of stakeholders and communities when it comes to the analysis and reporting of our data. So from about October this year, we'll be starting to engage with our stakeholders with the preliminary data set to really shape up the findings in a way that's going to be most useful and meaningful for them. And we'll be happy to provide presentations online or in person to different stakeholder groups from sort of later this year and early into 2024. And then finally, the data set that's created through this particular funding will be made available through our usual mechanism. So all of our data at Growing Up in New Zealand is available for researchers or policymakers of whatever your definition of research and policy making might be, through our Growing Up in New Zealand data access process. And we hope that will be available in the first stage of 2024. So just want to acknowledge, like others, the funding support from MB, the support from the Chief Science Advisors that have sponsored and helped us design our questionnaire. And we're really looking forward to working with others on this platform and hopefully our stakeholder groups on the call to really ensure that young people's voices are enhanced as part of this pūtea, this pot of research funding. Kia ora, thank you.